Positioning is one of the most important things you need to know as a strategist player. It is especially important for Luna Snow due to how her only mobility option forces her to essentially stop participating in the fight. As a disclaimer, this video is meant to act as a guideline and not a foolproof strategy to positioning and rotating. My favorite initial spot in Klyntar on defense is on the boxes on the left of the map. Every time I play defense on this map with Luna, I get to the point as soon as possible and activate the bridge so I can skate to behind the wall. Once the round starts, you can break a hole in the wall just enough so you can walk through and get on the boxes. You then have a little cubby hole you can back up into and take cover with if you're being shot at. This angle is particularly nice for enemies that are going main and the little doorway on the right. If you get hurt, your other support, who is likely to be standing on point by the lower boxes or high ground behind you, will be able to heal you easily. There are a lot of options in this position. If you take some damage, you can back up behind cover and wait for self-healing or for your other support to heal you. If you need to drop down, you can use the boxes themselves as cover from the main attacker path. If you need a health pack, you can skate toward it from the side and people usually don't notice you going for it. If it's not too risky, and you need better positioning after dropping down, you can activate the lift and get to high ground. If your entire team drops and the teamfight is over, you can activate the bridge again to get back to high ground and skate towards spawn. If you want to support your team who's pushing forward, you can get up on the platform and go to the next spot up that lets you see more and cover your overextending team. And then when your team retreats, you can retrace your steps. The strengths of this position is being able to see your team on point, having third-person perspective advantage versus enemies down the choke, and being able to take cover easily with a variety of options. The main weakness of this spot is when the entire enemy team decides to take the left path. If the entire enemy team portals the high ground, you have to rotate around with your team to take cover from high ground, but make sure to watch out if they decide to split their team. Usually, you're able to survive against dive from Spider-Man or Black Panther due to how awkward the wall makes their movement. For Psylocke and Magic, however, they will give you difficulty and force you to rotate away from your position. If you have to, due to excessive diving, make sure to rotate towards your other support. Depending on where your other support is positioning, for example, if they're on high ground, you can use the high ground bridge path, which is the safest, assuming you have enough time to do so. If you don't have enough time, you have to simply drop down onto point and take cover from their main front line using the tall boxes at the choke. Depending on their team comp, like a lot of shorter range characters, you can risk skating along the right wall on low ground to get to cover. If your other support is positioning at the other set of boxes on the opposite side of point, usually they're the first support the enemies will go for and you should be able to keep them up. If for some reason they choose to focus you instead, consider the options mentioned previously, like going for the health pack or using the bridge again, or if your other support is actually trying to save you, you can skate along the wall towards the low ground health pack room or towards them. Sometimes your team will like to push up into the choke and drop line of sight with you due to the stacked boxes at the middle of the choke. It's up to you whether you want to adjust your positioning, like dropping down or moving up around the left high ground to try and support them. I typically just wait for them to come back into my line of sight while poking the enemy because my other support is usually able to cover them for long enough to retreat to my healing. To be honest, the box spot is kind of 50-50 where sometimes your team crumbles really fast because of the block line of sight and sometimes your team is unkillable because you can cover everyone uncontested. Even if you don't choose to position on the boxes on the left of the point, make sure to break the wall in front of the bridge because it lets you see if any enemies are using that path. A pretty standard spot people end up rotating towards is inside the small health pack room. It's pretty safe to heal from here temporarily after rotating from a different spot. Once you use up the health pack though, you should try to reposition to a better spot because this spot has very little information on flankers. From this position, it's really hard to tell whether there's someone coming from the top left path or someone coming from the right side in the middle of a fight. My secondary spot is to position high ground on either the left or right gap. This takes advantage of Luna's hit scan and infinite range. You can see far down the main choke and you can heal allies from afar with no heal fall off. There's also a health pack you can rotate to in the room below you if you need to take a second to heal up. Due to how Luna is susceptible to dive, standing by yourself here is pretty risky, so you have to be aware of which enemies can dive you. If they run you down with divers, make sure to rotate towards your team by jumping down the right side and skating. However, if their main frontline team has a lot of frontwards damage, it might be a better option to rotate directly down the ramp to get the health pack instead of risking taking long range hits in the open when trying to get help from your team. Luckily, Captain America usually can't get to the spot easily, so it'll usually be a diving duelist, which means their main team has reduced firepower. Another spot I see people use is the boxes on the right. This spot is pretty popular with characters like Invisible Woman or Cloak and Dagger. As Luna, I don't like this position because it really feels like my options are limited and it makes my camera angle awkward, giving the enemy the advantageous third-person angle. I feel like you can only choose to rotate back into the room with the health pack when you're under attack. The only upside is you're able to play closer with your main team. If your other blonde support is playing around the spot and they have a lot of dive, you both need to help each other out, so sticking together may be the better choice. If your team fails to defend the point, your next spot should be this high ground up this lift. This is the best spot hands down in this area because 1, you can see straight down to basically their spawn, 2, it's hard to get up here without a committed hard flank from the right side, 3, you can see enemies taking the left path to flank, and 4, you can poke for free since they can't use the cart for cover. It's just a really good spot. You also have a lot of options from up here. You can use the lab decoration as cover, you can simply back up for cover, you can take the bridge to the other side for a further back position, you can drop down the safe side to your team for help, you can drop down the backside in an emergency to get help from your team, or you can take the boost lift to the other high ground for fun and for a top-down view on the enemy. If the card gets past the high ground spot and your team is regrouping to fight one last team fight before the card gets to the checkpoint, I would recommend trying to take the right path instead of funneling with the rest of your team on the left path. The right path has better cover because of the boxes and it's not straight down a line for you to die to their Luna's clapping ability. Maneuver around the boxes as much as you can to survive and help your team. Usually this sort of last-ditch team fight is just a means to stall and it's really hard to win unless your team has an overwhelming advantage in ultimates and abilities. However, if their team has dive and they're all funneling the left path to assault your other support, you can stand further back and try to keep them up. Once past that checkpoint, my favorite spot is to stand outside of the cave-like area on the left using that wall as cover. Enemies don't typically take the left path even though there's a health pack there and you're far away enough from the right path of walls and edges that you have ample time to respond to flankers. The cave area is also perfect for you to clap multiple people when a teamfight is happening inside. You can rotate around the left side towards the health pack if you're being singled out and need it, or if the teamfight is going horribly, you can rotate towards your spawn by taking the path that can be closed off with a wall. Typically, I usually die before my team dies, but if you and your team is surviving and being pushed back from the cave and you have no abilities on cooldown, you'll just have to tolerate how bad it feels while retreating from the top of the hill. Hug the left wall and use the terrain as cover as much as you can. If everyone survives and you reach the bottom, make sure to wrap yourself around the terrain fully so you don't take collateral damage. Once in this final area of Klyntar, defense feels really bad because defenders in main are looking upwards due to the terrain elevation. The initial spot you were forced back into is fine as a temporary spot to keep the team alive to win the teamfight. Ideally, and when you have the time to rotate in between teamfights, you should skate around to this high ground spot. This spot is once again susceptible to flankers and divers from the right path, but has a nice clear view of the main cart path as well as a lot of information. You can also adjust your spot by moving around here, and there's also a health pack nearby. If you need help with dive, make sure to rotate towards your team by either risking it and jumping down directly into main, or skating towards spawn behind the walls. If you're coming out of spawn for a last-ditch teamfight, try to stick with your team to build your ult to stall the cart. If it's not a last-ditch teamfight, you can also try to use this high ground spot right in front of spawn to look and poke the enemy. I don't recommend this spot usually because the enemy will see you first and shoot you when approaching, forcing you to move down, which then cuts off your line of sight for anyone on the left that's holding the cart or being flanked on the far left path. Positioning on attack is always tough, especially for the first point because you're at the mercy of your team. You're forced to follow your team and just use any cover you can that's nearby. If your entire team portals to their high ground, make sure you don't get surprised by anyone coming up the ramps. Make sure to not drop down until the teamfight is won unless you really need help and your team is all on point. If your entire team does not portal but decides to walk the right side to high ground, it's the same idea. Don't drop down until it's safe and keep your other support close. If your team decides to fight the right lower choke, you should stay back by the wall beside the stairs to heal them. Make sure to periodically check the area above you on the left and right because defenders can rotate there easily to flank. If your team brute forces the main choke, I usually walk with them but from a distance. I typically perch behind this lab tube thing until my team can walk up. Flankers will usually come from the left door or if your team is far up enough, from high ground on the right side. I usually let my other support focus on healing the bulk of the team while I cover them from any divers. If there are no flankers, you can walk up with your team and take cover with the stacked boxes to clap the point when given an opportunity. If you're being dived, you can only rotate forward towards your other support for help. Once the point is captured, I typically hang out around the cart and push it the entire time unless my team is super extended and desperately needs my help because the other support can't or isn't enough. Luna's long range lets her support from further back typically, letting her be the payload princess. However, once the cart is about to turn any corner and the teamfight is about to start or is ongoing, I back away from the cart so my team can fight with the cart and I cover them from behind. At the first turn, I usually hug this right wall to heal whoever's in front of me or hug the far left wall if my team is able to push up further up the choke. If the teamfight is somehow happening at this next turn instead of the previous one, it's ideal to hug the right wall here or use one of the previous positions and avoid the left wall because everyone can see you there and there's no cover. You should be able to see if anyone is taking the long path to flank you from the sides, so just be aware if they decide to do that. When the card is at this point and a teamfight is about to happen, I let the card go forward and stay back at this turn because I can use the wall here as cover while healing whoever is on the card. It also avoids the line of sight from the funneling path from their spawn, which would let them shoot me for free. This spot also lets you see if anyone is taking the further box cover spot, as well as see if anyone tries to take the bridge above you as a position to attack the backline. If they try to take the bridge spot above you, just hug their wall more and duck into the hole in the wall if needed while keeping your team alive. Only fight them if they drop down and commit to fighting you. Once the card gets past the checkpoint, it's a similar situation in the cave as defense. You want to use the left side as cover while your team fights on the cart and pushes through the cave. Watch out for flanks on either side, but you should be able to hear anyone from the left and see anyone coming from the right. If you get past the cave, you can typically stand in the open near the right side as cover while your team fights around the corner with the cart. You can also stand on the left side hugging one of the walls and using it as cover if someone is trying to take the defensive high ground position. This position lets you heal your team and see a lot while denying the opposite high ground position from shooting you. If your team gets around the corner and is right about to push into the end, you can use this little pillar as cover, but it really sucks since it's so close to the cart. I recommend hugging the left wall after clearing the high ground, forcing the enemy team to file onto the cart for last-ditch stalling or standing at this spot here with cover. That's all for Klyntar Symbiotic Surface. I honestly just wanted to share my favorite spot, which was the first box one on defense with the broken wall. If this video was helpful and you're interested in seeing my suggestions for other maps, please comment which map I should do next. Thanks for watching!